Hello, welcome in everybody. If you do notice that there's anything funky going on, just let us know straight away. Then we are going to go ahead and get started. We're Channel Automation. If you haven't heard of us before, we handle text, email, and making sure that all of your messages are going out to customers in a way that is beneficial and happy to the user journey. I'm joined here today by Vic Sun, who is the CEO of Channel Automation. And we're going to be going over the new TCPA laws that are going to be in effect on January 27th, 2025. We want to make sure that you guys are all prepared for that and that you know what you need to do in order to comply. And we'll also give suggestions on what we're going to do in terms of helping our clients and helping you. So without further ado, I will go ahead and head to the next screen.
All right. Yeah. So one of the major changes in 2025, and a lot of people already know about these because they've either attended a lot of these events or legal symposiums, or they already have their law or compliance teams go through it. Is really the new things with the TCPA. It's the one-to-one consent. So we're going to discuss how this is going to affect businesses, what it means, right, to your business, how it's going to affect your ability to connect with a customer, past your initial ingestion of the lead, for example, or the appointment, and revenue wise, what that would mean, what strategies you can take. But first thing we do is we just go with the first thing is, what is it, right? That's really going to affect every business pretty much in the United States, whether you're in home services, automobile, debt or debt consolidation, tax. How is this going to affect you? Well, the first thing is the one-to-one consent. The one-to-one consent is essentially by January 27th, what's going to happen is if you do not have this very, very specific consent where the consumer, has given your business specifically consent to reach out to them using automation, especially, and with solicitation and marketing messages, you'll lose that ability, after January the 27th. Meaning if you have these leads that you've purchased from lead aggregators or generators in which, you bought this lead, it's probably unbranded. It's probably a lead where, it's coming from lead sources where they sell it to other companies, or your competitors. In all likelihood, if from the beginning of the year to about the third quarter, because lots of companies have not been making any changes, those leads, as well as the leads from last year, you'll lose the ability to go and follow up with them using automation, right? You'll still be able to manually message those customers or at least call them, but you'll lose the ability to use any type of automation to solicit or follow up. Okay, because that one-to-one consent is going to be required. And we'll go more into detail about that. Also, the thing that you should know is that it also changes the way lead sellers and the cost of leads in 2025 and beyond, because these costs will balloon, right? It's a fact that if I'm a lead seller and I used to be able to sell these leads to 3 to 5 to 10 businesses, lead buyers, with a single consent form in the past, or at least what's current right now, I'm not going to be able to do that moving forward unless I let the customer go and check off and say, yes, I want specific companies or these companies to message me in this specific way moving forward. And so that's going to increase your costs. It'll also mean that if you're using things like Active Prospect, if you're rejecting some of these leads from duplication, you may not want to reject them. You might have to change that, because if you don't have the one-to-one consent, you're going to have to repurchase those things. So that's like the immediate impact of the new TCPA. Okay, so this is what we talked about. I think the biggest loss, especially if you're just kind of getting to this right now, is you're probably going to lose a huge part of your database. Okay. Your database is going to mean that if you don't have this one-to-one consent, okay, you're going to lose out on the ability to follow up on whatever's already in your system. Okay. So just want to go and point that out to the audience here or to the people who are listening. You may have had to consent this year or maybe last year, and you may be still talking to these people right now or using some form of automation to go and reach out to them. But come January the 27th, if you do not have the one-to-one consent, um, you're going to lose the ability to message them or call them using a dialer or any sort of system, including ours, right? Because of the new laws. And so, you need to really get on this thing as quickly as possible because you can look at your database and you can go, do I have the one-to-one consent? If if you haven't been doing anything in the last few months or the last half year to really update those consent forms, audit your lead sellers and check their consent packages, and you're not storing this already in your database, in all likelihood, your only shot of being able to recover that database is to utilize systems like ours. In some spaces like home services, we're the only ones doing this, where we're going to do our very best to automate the re-opt or try to get the customer to opt in to you and then take them down funnel. But I think that's probably the biggest thing because it's a cost for you um, moving forward, right? So again, I mentioned this already. If you have these leads already in your database, and now in January or in February, you know, your system's rejecting, you have this active prospect or Journia, something like that, and you have a suppression list, or at least, part of that feature is to suppress leads that you already have. If you do not have that one-to-one consent, you're going to have to readjust that because you're going to have to repurchase those leads because you're going to have to purchase the leads to have the one-to-one consent. Otherwise, you're going to have to manually, you're going to have to rely on manual contact. Okay. Um, Being an expert in this thing is going to be close to impossible at this point, unless you have partners or you use services that already are ahead or at least doing these things for you. With regards to like lead sources may no longer be able to sell to you, that is absolutely a fact. Because if you used to deal with lead aggregators, okay, lead aggregators are the ones who don't produce the traffic or don't publish, right? They're the ones who actually buy the traffic from different landing pages and then they resell. They're basically a reseller. You're not going to be able to buy from them unless they're able to give you the one-to-one consent. And warm transfers on inbound phone calls as well are in danger. We'll talk about calls more unless it's a direct phone call or a direct transfer, not warm transfers. Okay, so there's all these things where you might have had 100 lead sources, in the past. Come January, you go look through that 100 lead sellers to you, and maybe there's about 30 to 40 of them, 30 to 40% of them who are lead aggregators. They aggregate, they buy leads and then they sell them. They're not going to be able to do that as much, or a lot of them are going to go away. Or you're probably closing shop and they're doing a fire sale of leads right now. So that's something that, you guys need to consider. Okay, so just to, kind of to rehash this, a lot of this you can Google, a lot of this you'll be able to get from the slides that we send to the people who've registered for this event. But just really, it's just one-to-one consent is the consumer is saying, you can go ahead and connect with me in this fashion using automation. You can solicit, but it's your company. Okay, so if you have a franchise, and we'll go through this, or you have other affiliates or other names of your business, you're not going to be able to do those sort of things in like, that you used to be able to do. You have to be like, because the consumer now knows that if you're company X, only company X is what they want the messages from. So if company X owns company Y and so on and so forth, you're not going to be able to go and message those. And so let's go back to the other ones, like what kind of things are affected. Yeah. So uh, regulated technology or anything that's automation is really dialers, okay? A2P systems. A2P systems are, uh, SaaS platforms like channel automation, um, marketing cloud, okay? Um, all these other technologies that you use that automate messaging or phone calls, right? Or when you reach out to people. So most of it is this new TCPA one-to-one consent is really going to affect the majority of phone calls and texts that are automated. Okay. Now, if you haven't, been researching this, this is going to affect your business in the worst way because they're going to start enforcing it. So basically, January 27th, they gave it about a year. Now they're going to start enforcing it, meaning you're going to have more people getting fined or getting sued, whatever the case may be. So you really got to make sure that you protect yourself. You can't be reliant on just technology like Active Prospect or Journaya or these, you have to be more um, capable of being able to check, your flows or check that you're storing the data correctly. It used to be where, maybe Active Prospect or Journaya might send, the originating URL, or maybe here's the opt-in when they, now you have to store the opt-in, the date, the time, the timestamps, and then every single time they opt out, you have to store that too. And then every time they opt in again, you have to store that too. So you have to keep that history. And I believe it's like a 4-year period. So where you used to just have a service like Active Prospect, I mean, technologies fail in some cases, right? I'm not saying Active Prospect, will have this issue, or Journaya or these, services, or Leadbite, whatever that, that form type service that you're using. But keep in mind that you're responsible. It's not your lead seller. It's not your lead generator. It's not the services that are responsible. It's the business. So you've got to create things like redundancy, right? This is my suggestion. With our customers, we create redundancies where we have an SFTP, or we utilize a server or a database that they're able to go um, and store this data and this metadata, and you can easily recall it. So if you do end up shutting off one of these services for your forms, you still have this data. So you just keep that in mind. When you're doing this, you are responsible as the business. You can't pass that to the service that you're using, because otherwise you're going to pay the price later on when you get sued or when you get fined. And it is per violation. It's not like they're going to say, well, this happened 15 times in the last, week. And so, this month we'll fine you. No, it's going to be 15 pieces of violations. And that's going to definitely cost you a lot of money. Let's move on. Uh, is this only for text? No, it's for text, phone calls, and in some cases emails. Although emails is a lot more, and you do have to. I mean, I just want to preface that we're not a law firm, so you have to check. You attend this webinar, you still have to check with your compliance team, with your legal team. These are things that we're suggesting, that you do so that you're prepared. But you do have to still go through that process. We do highly recommend it, and one firm that we recommend is a Troutman and Eaton. They've been very good all year. Last year, the year before that, they're already ahead. And so we'll even show you some of the things that they've done here. They are one of the premier companies that deals with TCPA, and they do focus on that. They have a website called TCPA World. We recommend you visiting that, reaching out to Eric. You can tell them that, Channel Automation sent you. So it's not just for phone calls. Obviously, you can still make manual phone calls, but it's not scalable. So if the businesses who are interested in this, they're not going to think, okay, well, I just make manual phone calls, because let's face it, over time, you're not going to be able to track those calls or make those that scale, you can't scale that. It's untenable for most businesses that grow. So it's really important that you address this. And yes, text and phone calls are somewhat synonymous, again, depending on the state. So if they, maybe this year they go and say, stop on a text, you may still be able to call them. Now there's going to be more stringent laws depending on your state. And in many cases, in some states, it's even tougher laws than the federal laws. So you have to deal with federal and the state level. Okay. And in some states, if they tell you to stop on text, you can't call them either. Okay. Because now they've said no to your business, not just to that channel. So it's really important. We have some questions here from the audience. Things like, what other small businesses doing to take charge and ensure compliance for the storage piece. Lots of them don't know this, right? So when I suggested you don't need, a consultant per se, channel automation customers will already have that in terms of, the recommendations we make. So this is, yes, you're going to need somebody who's technical, but believe me, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Some of these things are pretty easy to set up, and our team's able to make recommendations or even in some cases do it for you. Um, with regards to CRMs, yes, your CRM should host this. So that's definitely your database for the consent. Okay. And so if your database has these fields, right? So for example, if you're in Salesforce, you have these fields and great. You just need to make sure that they're not getting overwritten. You're keeping track of the opt-in, the date, the opt-out, the date, the opt-in, the date, and so on and so forth. And that doesn't get overwritten. And again, you have to store it for at least 4 years. So those are the things that, you know, we would, we would recommend. And then, yes, active prospect. Again, this is another question from the audience here. Active prospect, it's something could assist with the passage of the one-to-one consent. Yes, they're going to be able to help capture, right? When people go through your forms, for example, but keep in mind, they're not the ones responsible for the language. They can make recommendations. You still need to have that. And it's not like they're going to be vetting your lead sources for you, right? You have to still vet those lead sources and make sure that when you get the one-to-one consent, that language is accurate. And we're going to post that here. The Troutman and Mean firm has come with this, like the Troutman and Mean 15, where it shows, what they recommend to make sure that the language is secure and that you have this, because there are nuances to this. Active prospect helps absolutely, and Journey and services like this to capture this and to be able to go and store it. But we find that a lot of customers are not picking those informations out, and they're basically relying on it. They're not looking and testing the recall feature to make sure, like, hey, 3 weeks ago I had this. Is it easy for me to recall? Does it have all those particulars? Again, you've just got to be more, you just got to be more involved, okay, and not rely specifically on that, because a lot of things could get missed. Okay. Um, with regards to the exemptions, manual phone calls and non-telemarketing calls and texts. So the manual phone calls, we understand that you're basically dialing manually. You can still do that. But again, it's untenable, especially when you're scaling your business. Think about, you get something as an inbound phone call right now from a radio or TV spot, right? You spend a lot of money, or somebody goes to your website, they call you. You don't have this lead in your system. Okay. So it's calling you. If you, the recording that you used to rely on, okay, where you record and you say, hey, you give us your consent, you can't rely on that anymore. So even if, let's say, you scheduled the appointment, you made an appointment, for example, during that inbound phone call, if you do not get their one-to-one explicit consent, in which from our perspective, we actually send them, okay, something during that phone call where we ask the customer to go and opt in for future messages, notifications. Okay. Then we store this and then we send it back to your database as well as to your CRM. But if you don't have us, what my suggestion would be to make sure that on the inbound phone calls, you have a process where you're able to get your agents and your process to get that inbound caller to opt in for notifications, coupons, marketing messages, and automation in the future. Because otherwise, let's pretend you have that customer, you scheduled an appointment, you hung up the phone, you didn't get the one-to-one consent. You can still call them manually, but imagine this: in the future, as this list of customers who have an appointment, maybe they didn't buy, now you're trying to rehash. you have to manually call or text them. And as that list grows to the hundreds or thousands, you're not going to be able to do this in a systematic way. So you won't be able to use any sort of automation to offer them discounts, follow-ups, rehashes, whatever the case may be. Um, Informational things are also exempt. So, for example, if you're letting them know your consultant or the person who's meeting you is on his way or on her way, that's fine because you're notifying them. So Walmart had a very good case, which you guys can Google, where they got sued, and it's if somebody bought something from Walmart Plus and it happened to be late in the day or they didn't really know and they sued Walmart at a class action. Now, Walmart prevailed because, the Supreme Court said, look, those are notifications. They weren't trying to sell you things. They weren't trying to go and solicit. They were basically saying, hey, you purchase this, it's on its way. Okay. But again, lots of companies try to play with that. So, the onus is on the business to make sure that your messaging, the copy and the content is very specific and it's compliant with non-solicitation. Okay. And then you've got to go federal and then you got to check state. So again, there's just a lot of these things, um, you know, to uh, to be able to do that. Our company will release guidelines and recommendations to let we have hundreds of workspaces, so we're going to start sending that to our customers who and we'll have a list of checkpoints before January that they have to check in so that the messaging and all of these things are compliant, and we're letting them know about the secure changes that we're making in the system. So that's happening in the next week or two here for channel automation customers. Okay. What kind of calls and texts are exempt? We already mentioned a couple of those notifications, manual and to existing customers. So with existing customers, there are rules, typically 3 months, 18 months, depending on, on the defined allowances and the period of that. You have to go and check that per state and what the FTC rules have, but you still want to get those people opted in regardless. That's our stance. And that's why with our automation, it provides customers the ability to re-opt. We just call it re-opt because they've already opted in. But this time we send them to a AI built landing page over, with personalized messaging that gives them a chance to go and say, hey, this is how I want you to connect with me in the future. And you'll see that in a Traum and a Mean, that it's not enough to just tell them, hey, we're gonna message you and there's marketing things in there and automation. You'll see that there's even boxes where you might need to ask them, how do you want us to connect with you? Email, text, chat, whatever, voice. Okay, so that's really important. Let's go to franchises here and consent. So this happens to be, this is a good slide here that the team produced. You'll see here that the consumer, gives consent to Costco, and then Costco that owns Kirkland, okay, um, wants to connect now with that consumer. Well, we can't do that in January, after January 27th, because the consumer only gave consent to Costco, even though Costco owns Kirkland. The consumer may not know that, right? And so for them, it's like, well, I only want to deal with Costco as a brand. So this is really important for those of you guys who have different brands, okay, under the helm of, let's say, your parent company. It's going to mean that you're going to have to change that. So some companies will do business as, for example, if I was a remodeling company and I had Remodeling X, but my bath company was bathrooms, you know, uh, bathrooms.com, okay, or whatever that name is. You can't expect to go and use the leads that gave consent to Remodeling X company and now message them as Bathrooms Are Us. Can't do that. You cannot expect that your franchise or your affiliate, will have the same consent. So that's really important. Here's another thing. So you got to pay attention to this one, guys. What I'm saying to you guys, there's a lot of documented cases where people this year were in fact a part of class action lawsuits. When you go and speak to a consumer, and the consumer says, "Hey, um, go ahead and text my wife or my spouse." Okay, they give you the number with the new one-to-one consent. Okay, especially with the enforcement of these rules, you cannot automatic use automation. Again, automation is the thing here, and the 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 use of robotics or anything AI to that number. You can call it manually, right? So you can call the spouse, for example, manually, or even text it manually, but you can't subscribe that new consumer, even though that they're related, because that person didn't give you the consent. So I know a lot of companies, when they use their CRMs, they go have a spouse there and they put the number down, and then they just automatically subscribe that spouse to the same flow or to the same automation. Can't do that, folks, right? Don't do it. Okay. Unless you want to do it manually, again, it's keep harping on the same thing here, you're fine. But if you're going to subscribe those people to sequences, to automatic messaging that has to do with soliciting them or asking for something that has to do with marketing messaging, okay, you're going to have a problem. So with those sort of things, we want to make sure that the audiences are informed. Like, you've got to start looking at your processes, and you've got to look at the law, and you've got to align those, because otherwise your agents who may not know this, who may not care about it, or who may not be informed, could be causing you that issue. And if you have systems that allow for subscribing customers automatically, and agents are able to do that, you need to really look at those automations. You look at your service. You can speak to us, and so we can show you how our system protects our consumers from being able to do that automatically. Like, you have to go through rounds and rounds of things, and only the administrators can do it, and everybody's notified. But unless you have that, it's really important that you look at your processes. Okay, so this is a major change in that. You'll also, before I go into verbal consent, if you're a dealer, okay, let's pretend, again, I want to use uh, an example in home services, for example, okay, or solar. And let's say you're buying from a manufacturer, okay, and that manufacturer is the one that you're relying on leads. Maybe you're bathroom manufacturer A is selling you these leads right now, okay, and it's under their name. Unless you have that one-to-one consent, because your name's going to be different, right? So, for example, a manufacturer like, I'll just use uh, bathroom X again, manufacturer. Somebody goes to their website, it's a branded bathroom X lead. They can't be selling it to a bathroom X dealer without them informing and getting the consent that now you're being, now you're going to get messages, especially with automation, from, let's say, California Baths, or you can say bathroom X by California Baths. Can't do that, folks. It falls under the same rules as the one-to-one consent per company. So you really got to look at your lead sellers or who's providing you, and making sure, because if your name isn't bathroom X manufacturer and they've only got in that bathroom, now, even if you're a dealer, you may be in danger, may not have that. Systems like ours will check this to make sure that that's there. And if you don't have it, no automations go out. You can still manually message them, manually call them. And our system, we're launching a new compliant soft phone in the first quarter to help with customers, because we realize a lot of people are going to have to do some manual calling, and that's free for all our customers. That's going to help you realize that if you don't have these pieces of information, and you haven't been looking at your lead sources, and you haven't looked at your process, now is the time to do it. Don't wait. You're just setting yourself up for disadvantage. And if you have dealers in your network that have the same issue, and they don't know what to do, and you're getting these, I've heard that some manufacturers are starting to send these indemnification clauses and addendums to, and then you're responsible. That's not going to protect you just because you signed that. You've got to make sure that if they send you something, the one-to-one consent is for your business. Okay. It can't be blanket. Well, the manufacturer has the one-to-one consent. I'm a dealer. I represent them. Nah, can't do that. Because if you're not them, you can't use automation, solicitation, marketing, messaging, using all of these robotics and AI and whatever. You can manually message them, but you can't do the rest that I talked about. Okay. All right. Verbal consent. So we talked about the inbounds. Okay, inbound phone calls. I think this is where a lot of people get really confused. They go, "Oh, well, we record everything on a recorded line, or the IVR catches it." Well, you used to be able to rely on those. You can't do that anymore come January 27th, right? You have to be able to go and, number one, you have to be able to go and get the documented one-to-one consent. So ideally, and Casey here and our team has been discussing with the FCC, like we've been communicating directly with the FCC and their lawyers, right? And so we'll show you some of that here on this webinar. But just to give you guys, some of the highlights of it is, number one, can't use the recording anymore. That's not enough. Number two, if you can help it, right? You want to make sure that before they make a phone call, they give you the one-to-one consent if you intend to follow up with them using automation, solicitation, marketing messages. So ideally, you would change the architecture or the user journey from the marketing level top funnel. So if I was running ads on TV, right, and I would go, here's a number, call this number, I might consider now saying, before you call, register here, or send them to the website first. Okay. Or if you were a channel automation customer, right, we have deep linking and keyword technology where you might go, text the keyword this to this number, or here's a QR code, or both. Then we can opt them in. Because if you don't do that prior to the phone call, here's what you're going to have to do. Okay. One,
You'll notice a lot of people are using, a lot of new commercials have a QR code at the end. So keep an eye out for that because that's going to be the new norm.
yeah, and keywords are actually good, and we've actually seen. I think I'm just gonna throw a number out there, like 30%, 3 out of 10 companies have started to order short codes through us, because, especially the larger companies, because it's easier for people to remember, right? Like you go, text the word save to 55555, something like that. And people remember that. Our system captures that and gets them to give you the one-to-one consent through our AI, through our customized landing pages that have that information, and we send it to your system and store it, etc. But if you don't have us, and now you're thinking, well, I do get phone calls. You might want to, and this point is a strong recommendation, looking at that user journey and saying, before they even call me, I want to get that one-to-one consent. Because otherwise, your only options now are to do it during the phone call. Okay. And now, if you don't get it during the phone call, if they hang up and you're not able to do that, you can follow up manually, but in all likelihood, you won't be able to go and get automation. You won't be able to use automation to communicate with them. Okay. So let's keep going. There are things in here like verbal consent from PCR registration forms. We already do this for you. So the benefit of working with our customer with channel automation is we handle all of that TCR registration. It is 4 to 10 DLC. Essentially, what it means is we register your scripts and the campaigns and the copy and the words. We do all of that, right, for you as part of our service. So you don't have to. It's part of the requirements in the first place. It just so happened that we allow our customers to own their brand and their numbers, and so we do it for them. Okay, we assist in that. Verbal consent requirements, clarity is key. Yeah, for sure. They can't be ambiguous. You have to tell them if you're using AI. It's a good idea to be forthcoming, letting them know, hey, you're going to be following up using these particular technologies, and here it is. And again, the Troutman Amin 15, which we'll post here, has some of this that you can use. If you have an auto dialer, a dialer is like something like a 59, nice in contact. Okay. These are dialers. Dialers, um, you're gonna have to recalibrate your dialing systems. If you now this is about requirements, so we'll talk about all of those, but just a little bit of free advice for the people out there using 5.9 or something similar. Review your buckets, review your queues, review your skill groups. Here's why. If you do not have that one-to-one consent, you should silo those leads to a bucket, a queue, okay, or an audience segmentation, so that those are only managed by callers who are going to use a soft phone, whether it's our soft phone or your soft phone, because 5.9 or dialers like that do have soft phones where you have a dial pad. Then you can just basically go through that list. Now, I know it sounds crazy. Why am I paying $150, $220 per license if I'm manually um, calling these people? Well, that's the new world we live in, folks. If you do not get the one-to-one consent, you have to use manual systems, processes to connect with a consumer. You can't use automation. And even with the use of a dialer like 5.9, you've got to get your compliance officer or your legal team to review that, because the legal language on robotics or the automation is very clear. Like, I think in some cases a cell phone is considered, right, an automatic device. So you really have to be careful, folks, especially when you're using a dialer. Okay, connect with us so that we can go ahead and help you with some of these things. If you're already an existing channel automation customer, you're going to get those guidelines. Number two, scripting should reflect the same one-to-one consent language. So this is when you register. Okay. You're gonna have to have those scripts registered from the TCR registration, because they want to know what you're saying to people. And so if you register it, this is another layer that allows for you to have that. You should always have this consent language as well, that the scripting aligned to the forms. Okay. And then finally, keep records. Yes, you can't just rely on the recording, but it is a good idea to consider, let's say, an IVR where it used to be if somebody called and they just get to an agent, you might want to put them into an IVR, get them in that environment, have them press one or two to see, hey, are you okay with us texting you? Or are you, because, a lot of laws are kind of similar to HIPAA. They allow for those sort of things. Then you beef it up that during the phone call, whether it's AI voice or your agent, you now ask the customer for, hey, can I text you? Or send you an email so that you can get the one-to-one consent to me. So now I can follow up with you using automation. And again, there's best practices for that we'll be able to provide to channel automation clients. If you don't know what that is, go ahead and reach out to us. If you have dealers or groups that are worried about this, send them our way and we'll be able to do those. The IVR is not going to give you the one-to-one consent. It's just a layer in the journey, because it's kind of too late at that point. If once somebody calls in and they haven't given you the one-to-one consent because you haven't fixed your marketing top funnel, you now have to go and do your very best to to ferry the customer through this journey where you're going saying, hey, thanks for calling. Okay. We have notifications and coupons or promotions. We use automation to do this. We're not going to bombard you with text, but we do use text messaging automation and phone calls. Is that okay? Press 1 to go and subscribe, or to allow us to do this. Press 2, if you don't like that. And if they press 1, you collect that, right? During the phone call, your agent's informed, and then now your agent or the AI, you can do both, say, hey, this is an inbound phone call. We don't have the consent. Did you get that? Can I send you a text right now? Manually do that. Our system has ways to do this. For the agents, you send them the text message, the email. Now you get them to the environment where they can opt in, and then you can check that during the phone call. So you see, it's harder if you don't get the consent prior to the phone call, because now you're going to have to work on that during the conversation. Okay. If you do not receive this, obviously you can still manually follow up with them and say, hey, did you get that text, that one-time text that I sent you manually? Because I really do want to be able to send you the coupons and the notifications. But again, imagine this effort over hundreds or thousands of these calls, and over time, it's just really hard to catch up. So really, folks, I wish I was the bearer of good news. A lot of companies are going to lose out again on the databases or the ability to follow up using automation. So now is the time to take a breather, accept that you're going to lose out on some leads or it's going to be tough in the first month. But if you can get it down, you're going to be ahead because clearly there's a lot of companies who are not going to get ahead of this, and so they're going to be affected. With regards to the FCC, this is a direct email from the FCC corresponding with us. And so we just wanted to share that with you guys. It says here prior express written consent to a robocall, robotext, okay, and such consent must be obtained one seller at a time, right? So you can't be going in and saying, well, I have all these affiliates, I have all these other brands. You're opted in automatically to all of them. Can't do that, folks. And of course, the ensuing logic must be associated with the consumer's consent. So if you have landing pages that are offering people like, I know there's services in home in I won't name the companies or the company that does this, but they kind of offer like these trips to the Bahamas or a vacation package, and you just have to get a demo or maybe you have to buy a package. If the customer's interested in that vacation package, and the website is all about that, you could be in danger even if they give you that consent because the customer is like, well, I was interested in the free vacation. I wasn't there was nothing on the website about giving me details about a remodel or solar or debt consolidation or whatever the case may be. So really be careful about some of these offerings that you have or the leads that you purchase or the programs that you offer to customers that they have not opted into. Okay, because if they don't opt into those and the language and the content doesn't align, you could be violating the TCPA rules. Okay, again, manual things are okay, but again, you use automation, and if there's issues here, then there's contest. We can contest the fact that they didn't want that messaging. So you really have to be careful moving forward. You can't just be offering things that doesn't make sense that the customer doesn't want. Okay. Crafting a compliant web form. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah. So this is, I think, yeah, exactly. So this is available at TCPA World. Again, we recommend working with Eric and Pooja. Love those guys. They are really trying to help mitigate a ton of losses for consumer for the business, for the companies, and of course the consumers, right? Because if like imagine if a lot of businesses shutter down, like that happened with solar last year. Lots of business shut down because of the compliance piece. Um, Consumers didn't have more options, right? And so it hurts everybody all around. So it's really important to have that. This is the Troutman Amine 15. That's what they call it, right? That's proprietary to them. They're so nice that they actually produce this on the site to kind of give you a sense of what you must have. And so you'll see things here. Disclosure. So you gotta disclose things, right? You can't just be like, okay, well, it's just one sentence, and they know what I mean by that. Now you've gotta disclose, these things to be compliant. You'll also notice here that it says, awesome company 1, 2, 3, and that's because you have to obtain that one-to-one consent. So I know companies who go into Costco, Home Depot, Sam's Club. If you're not, especially your lead forms, let's say you have events, you have canvassers, and let's say you're um I know companies will hire a marketing company to collect leads for them, and they're representing that company and not you. Okay, so it shows, let's say Smart Circle. I mean, that's one of the companies that Sam's Club or Costco uses. If I'm looking at Smart Circle in the form of Smart Circle, I can't buy that lead and expect to use automation to follow up with those customers. I can manually call them and text them, but just keep in mind, we're trying to target the automation piece and the scalability of things. That form needs to have your name on it, your branding, and the clear identification of what you have to offer. Because if a customers think, well, I thought it was dealing with Smart Circle or Sam's Club, again, you lose the ability to use automation to follow up. Okay, that's really important. So if you're in Home Depot, same thing. I know companies will change their name. As long as you're representing as that company and that's the only company that's, you're moving forward and you're following up, you're fine. But if you're thinking, well, after 3 months, the Home Depot lead can be solicited by my other affiliate or my other brand that happens to be Costco. Can't do that, folks. Okay, it's that cross marketing is almost going to go away because again, it's one-to-one consent. And unless you can have a form like this where they're physically giving you the consent for those affiliates from those brands, great. If you don't, you need to think about this. You need to look at this and you need to start making changes to those forms. Our AI forms that go and get these disclosures already have this built in. So we use this because this is the part of the puzzle that gives our customers the ease of use. But if you're not using us, look at the TCPA World website, find the Troutman Amine 15. You can type that down in Google. It shows up, and do your very best to work with your web developers to make changes to your forms. And of course, this allows for you to store that information. So whether or not you have an active prospect, if you follow through this, to be honest with you, you may not necessarily need an active prospect. It's a good idea just for your peace of mind. But there are many companies that don't use active prospect that use these forms, and they simply are very good at storing it and recall. So I mentioned this to you. It's not going to take $100,000 to do this, right? It's actually quite cheap, especially since storage is cheap, from AWS to Vulture to Google Drive to there's so many storage companies out there, and space is cheap nowadays. Okay, all right. Changes in lead buying. Let's go through that. So, this is something that our active prospect partnership, has, we're sharing some of the things that they do very, very well. But this is kind of like how advertising works and what it means. So the consumer goes into the form, you have to fill it out, and they have to now opt in into the brands. Okay. And what's going to happen is if those brands aren't checked, they can't sell it anymore. The publisher can't sell it anymore to the to multiple lead buyers, because the only ones that they can sell it to are the people that have been given that particular consent. That's really what this page looks like. So you can imagine that lead costs are going to start rising because they used to be able to have the freedom to sell it to pretty much everybody, right? Who qualifies in that zip code or that territory. Now they're only able to sell it to certain people. So what does this mean for you? This is what you didn't hear maybe from some of these conferences, right? So as a channel automation customer, we have automation to help you with reviews. Now that this is one-to-one consent, people are going to start looking at your brand because they have their phone. They're going to go to their phone and say, before I go and give my consent to brand A, B, or C, let me Google them. Well, guess what? If you don't have a lot of good reviews, you're not 5 stars, you don't have this automation to go and generate a lot more reviews than your competitors. Number one, you're going to look, like a company that's not so a consumer might go, oh, they only have 100 reviews. I'm going to go with this other brand. They've got 10,000 reviews. Okay. Think about yourself like on Amazon when you're trying to buy something. Okay. You're looking at not only like, hey, does it have 4 or 5 star reviews? You're also looking at the number, because if it only has 5, okay, reviews, and you go, this other product has 10,000, right, or 100. I'm going to go with this because they look similar, but at least this one, they've sold more. It's the exact same thing, folks. People are so worried about buying the lead, they forget. Listen, you've got to look at yourself and make yourself look good. So if you're a channel automation customer in January, I recommend you go and work with your account team, right? That's been assigned to you, because we work with you week to week, right? And you start, or you make sure that you have the review boosting automation that is free, right, for you. Because if you're not putting an effort on that, or it's something that's there and you haven't necessarily boosted it, that's what I would suggest. Because next year, you will stand out, because the customers now are going to go to these landing pages from the lead generators, and they're going to go, what's this company X, Y, and Z? Let me go just Google them really quick. Oh, good. They've got 5-star reviews. They've got 170. The other companies only have about 15. I'm going to go with this one. Check. Now you get the lead. Okay, so you want to boost that, you want to help the purchases, you got to look downstream and go and say, hey, where do these people, how do people make decisions? They make decisions based on reviews. So people are so concerned sometimes about, well, what is it going to do to my system? They forget, like, I got to look good, right? I got to stand out. And so channel automation has these, programs, these AI to be able to go and boost your reputation. So please make sure that if you haven't done that, or if most of our customers already do, if you're a new customer, I would put an emphasis on that starting January. Okay, reviews. All right, and we can do that, by the way, for Google, Facebook, Yelp, Better Business Bureau, whatever whatever type of shoot, like Yelp quality, like we can send them anywhere, really. Okay, what can you do? There's more than one option to remain compliant in your outreach. Of course, you can do manual dialing and text. You can do manual and dials and calls from our system. The dials are good. That actually happen if you have a dialer or sort of a soft phone. We actually attach to that, so you can actually just your agent will just click and pop up. In the first quarter of next year, we're going to have our own branded soft phone. So many of our customers won't have to purchase that moving forward. On the text side, of course, you can manually text. You can use our AI to have suggestions. You can use tagging systems. Is this still a manual process, or a semi-manual process, or semi-automated process, whatever you want to describe that. And that gives you the chance to speed along the manual process. So manual, you can still do that if you don't get the one-to-one consent. Update your forms and your outreach. We've discussed this. You really need to make sure that you look at your processes and your forms. Don't leave it up to the lead sellers or aggregators. There are some lead sellers that are more scrupulous. There's some who are unscrupulous. So you really want to make sure that you take the time. Our systems will look for these things moving forward. And so if we do not have that, then we will notify you. So our system is very good at notifying you whenever lead sources sell you something or give you something that doesn't have this consent, right? And kind of streamlining that so that you can manage through those things. But the reality is you want to go from the very beginning. Don't wait till the end, right? Just like phone calls. You want to drive the customer to your environment where you can obtain the one-to-one consent, because if they make a phone call, especially, and they didn't give you the one-to-one consent, now you're going to have to work harder and put effort into collecting that. And let's face it, right? If you're relying on an agent or an AI, it's never guaranteed. So some customers might just go, I'm okay with that. You don't have to follow up with me. I'll just set in my one appointment and I'm good to go. Now you lose the opportunity to use automation over time to go and convert on those particular leads, appointments, what have you. The one-to-one consent on the database, absolutely. If you think about it, if you've got 10,000 leads right now in your database, and we're able to go and recover about 10% from our testing in the last year with this re-opting, that's the low number that we were able to get from leads that are actual homeowners. Okay. Think about it. 10,000, 1,000. Okay, so you lose the 9,000. Okay, it is what it is. But the 1,000, if each of those leads costs $100, that's $100,000 next year that you don't have to spend. Okay, so even though it is only 1 out of 10 or 10%, it's $100,000 in savings for next year. And I'm sure you can use that 100,000 to do other things. Okay, maybe now you're going to have to use that money to buy those leads again, that now you don't have the one-to-one consent. Now you're going to have to buy those. But again, these numbers are astronomical for some companies, but don't underestimate having to re-opt them in. If you don't have our system, and if you have dealers or you have groups, let them know to speak to us. We can't promise at this point that we can onboard them prior to January 27th, but we're happy to provide, recommendations and even the guidelines so that they can have somewhat of a chance to recover some of their database. Okay. All right. You got to inspect your lead forms, update your web forms, update your call scripts, basically preparing for this. And of course, you'd want to contact a lawyer or at least somebody in compliance to just review it, especially if you're in states that are litigious. Okay. for us, we've already discussed this. We're obviously providing existing customers and the new customers the opportunity to get to save or to recover or to restore the database. We call it Project Starfish around here because kind of regenerate, right? That it's allowing you to re-opt or to get that one-to-one consent using automation right now. Okay. After January the 27th, you lose that. So we have now until the 27th to be able to go and do this for you. Okay. Checking through and helping your team update web forms. Yeah, we already do this. We've been doing this from the beginning. We are a true partner. So we do go through your lead sources as well as some of these forms that, we see, hey, it doesn't have this language, and we provide you with the guidelines or the recommendations in order to correct those. And of course, making sure that you're compliant to our systems, constantly being updated to make sure that automation doesn't go out or messages don't go out, whether it's manual, semi-automatic, or automatic, if we don't have these opt-ins or these consent pieces. So where it might sound like restrictions, it really isn't. It's more like the ability to securely let you know, because we do provide notifications to customers and let them know, look, you can still manually text and call them. You just didn't get the one-to-one consent, and here are some ways to do that. Okay. This is really the part. This is it. This is the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our information is right there. You can reach out to our team or through LinkedIn. My cell phone is right there. Casey likes giving my personal cell phone. It's a business number, but you can go ahead. We use some automation on here. So, in all likelihood, if you text or call that, we're going to be sending you to our opt-in. we also comply with these things. So don't be don't be surprised if you get that and say, hey, you have to opt in, so then we can go and send you some further messaging. We're going to be sending, this deck out to the people who registered. Okay. Because it's going to take us maybe a week or two to edit. And we by that time, we don't know if we're going to be able to send this to everybody. Again, we're only sending this to people who registered or to our existing customers. Okay. And we have a guideline that's kind of like a checklist of sorts that will help our customers navigate through this. It really means that you need to have a partner. I know technology is technology, but one thing I would like to have everybody consider before they go here is when you choose a technology partner next year, or whatever the case may be, you really want to think about not just the cost, because cost is cost, but are they a true partner? Are they there when you truly need them? Okay, because no system's perfect. When there's a problem, are they on it? How fast are they going on it? Are they providing you with service more than just the technology? Because at the end of the day, if you can have the best technology, you can have the most, the cheapest service or the most expensive service. If the people don't care about your business, they're not there for you. It's really hard to think that when a problem arises, they're actually going to be around or they're going to back you up. So something to think about when deciding your vendors and your partners for next year. Otherwise, really hope that this was something that was useful for everybody. We're going to follow up in January, maybe one last way to kind of get people to be informed, before the deadline. Please reach out to our team. If you know companies that are struggling or don't know what this is, you can go and forward this or let them know to reach out to us. We're happy to give them recommendation. Again, we can't guarantee that we can onboard them in enough time to recover their database because we're already stacked, at least for the month of January. But at least we can probably guide them or at least give them some tips. Otherwise, Casey, was there anything else?
That is it. And thank you very much for joining in. And thank you for being here, Vic, and answering all of those questions and kind of parsing through all of the legal jargon. Thank you for everybody who has attended and people who aren't live with us, but watching on a different platform. We're happy to have you here too as a supporter. And that's going to be the end of our stream for today. Look out for us in the future. Make sure to subscribe. Give us our one-to-one consent so we can continue to contact you with some really, really good tips, tricks, and marketing must and necessities. And have a wonderful rest of your week.